staring straight at us. There was a pair of green eyes. We followed it with a lamp. We saw it all the way across the field, came to the wall, 6 to 7 foot tall. They cleared the wall completely down the other side and was gone. I could identify it as a cougar.
I think they're firmly established in the food chain. They're obviously breeding. I was 12 when I first saw the black panther. Those cats are still reported in the same area now. They're here to stay.
Welcome to Big Cat Conversations. We speak directly to people who've encountered one of Britain's big cats. We also discuss the bigger picture. I'm Rick Minter, and thanks for joining me. Hello and welcome to episode 121 of Big Cat Conversations. This one's being released in early February 2025 if you're listening on schedule. The theme for much of the edition is black cubs again, and especially as we have an update from Liz in Cumbria, who we heard from not long ago in episode 117. Later in the show we will hear about an intriguing case from many years ago in Devon, which seems to have been hushed up, so we will break the news on that one, and it really does offer much food for thought. So meantime, back to an ongoing case in Cumbria in northwest England, because we say hello again to Liz, to hear more about her experience having a mother black leopard and seemingly one youngster coming close to her property. Liz, thanks so much for returning. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me back on. Thank you.
Now, Liz, when we heard from you last time, the next edition was another cub report. That was Tommy years ago when he was talking about when he was a lad in Exmoor,
yes,
near Minehead. What did you make of that? Did you sort of see similarities in how he was describing and his emotions of his experience?
Yes, I did. I think he felt just like I felt. Well, you're not expecting to see a cub, are you? You're not expecting to see a big black cat anyway, but to see a cub I think is extra special because not many people see them. I found his story really interesting. Yeah, it was great, yeah.
And it was interesting that he said about she was guiding the cub and sort of nudging it. You haven't quite seen that, have you?
I haven't, no. I've never seen that. But that must have been really interesting to see, to watch the mother showing the cub where the mother wanted it to go. So, yeah, I'd love to see that.
You've seen calling, haven't you? Ushering and beckoning.
Yes.
And again, his was just the one, seemingly, at the time. Both of you just see just the one cub, it seems.
Yeah, well, as you'll find out later on, there is still just the one. We thought maybe there might have been another one in the grass, but obviously not. There's just the one.
Yeah, and I was actually waiting to hear if he would use the term teddy bear to match yours.
Yeah.
Late in the show, I prompted him, and of course his reaction was, oh yeah, that's obvious,
Yes.
Which was nice. He instantly got it, didn't he, I think?
And I thought that was really nice when he thought, oh yeah, because they do look like little teddy bears.
He mentioned a different aspect of the teddy bear nature to you, I think, because he was saying about the texture, the tufted texture.
Yes.
You were going more on the form, and they're very rounded, muscular, aren't they, at that very young age? And the ears, teddy bear ears.
I could see the rosettes as well, because I thought there was something wrong with the fur. I couldn't make it out, and then I realised it was the rosettes that I was seeing, yeah. Yeah,
good stuff. Now, Liz, when we finished off and released the episode last autumn, it all went quiet. I kept in touch with you, hoping that you'd have ongoing incidents, and you didn't at the start. And I thought, oh gosh, because I got good feedback from the episode, which was lovely, and people were hoping that we could have a follow-up one with you. And for quite a while I was thinking, that'll be it, it's gone. Straight after we released that episode, the whole thing is sort of finished. And
yeah.
Tell us what happened. Why do you think it went quiet, and for how long, and how did you feel about it?
Well, I was looking back because I kept notes of when I'd seen the cat or something suspicious. And the last time there was anything had been the 6th of October. Now, since then, there'd been a lot of activity on the farm. The farmer was here day and night, moving sheep around, getting new stock, and it was just constant. And I thought, she'll have gone. She won't hang around with a cub when there's so much going on. And I was so disappointed. And I think the only thing I managed to catch on the trail cam was the fat backside of a badger, which was nice in itself, but nothing, absolutely nothing. And I was so sad, in a way, because I got quite attached to the cat and its little cub. And I went out walking every day, searching and looking for signs of anything really, but there was just nothing. And then one day in late November, I thought, I'll just nip out for a walk. It was quite a nice day. And I was just walking across one of the fields and I could see something through the hedge in the next field. And I couldn't work out what was going on. And I thought, goodness me, that's a large sheep. And I thought, it's not a sheep, it's a cat. And I was watching and watching. Yes, it's a cat. And all the sheep had run to the top end of the field. And then I looked and there was a cub sat in the field, not far from the mother at all. And it had grown quite a bit, it really had. And it had this lovely, sleek black coat. They both looked very, very fit and well. I was actually choked, to be honest, because I was so pleased that they were well and that they were okay, and that's all that mattered. Anyway, I crouched down and scuttled across the field and hid in the hedgerow, and I was watching them, and they didn't see me. They obviously didn't get scent of me, and I was just watching them, and she was just prowling about. I don't know whether she was attempting to make a kill or deciding whether to or whether not to. And the cub was just sat watching her, and it was glorious to watch them. In the wild, they'd no idea I was there. And then all of a sudden, the corvids started making all their noise, and the magpies were swooping down at them. And they ran off into the next field, and I couldn't see them after that. But I was elated. I came running inside and I said to my husband, guess what? Guess what? The cat's here, and the cub. And it was a sense of relief that they were well, because with the farmers being here all the time, I actually thought they might never come back. I thought there was maybe too much going on and they may never come back. But obviously they did. Yeah, it was a wonderful thing to see. Unfortunately, as you probably know, all the trail cameras that I've got out are in absolutely the wrong place. So you put them where you think that, where they had been. So they were somewhere where I hadn't got a camera, where I'd never thought of putting a camera. Obviously, there's one there now. Oh, it's like shutting the gate when the horse has bolted, though, isn't it, really? But there's one there now.
And that incident, when you saw them across the field, did you have a smartphone camera with you that you could have used, or was it too far away, or did you not have your phone with you?
I've always got my phone because I take it with me just so that if I see something, I can get a photo, video, and it never entered my head to take the phone out of my pocket. I was so enthralled watching them, and when I was walking back to the house, I thought, why didn't you film that? And I was kicking myself, and I think I was just so, just taken up with that moment, I think, and I completely forgot. The phone was in the pocket. I could have just taken it out, and because I was in the hedgerow, they'd never have known. Oh.
Would it have been clear footage, do you think? Because zooming in on a phone camera often doesn't give you, much clarity.
It was a bright day. They were only about 20 feet away from me because I managed to get into the hedgerow and hunker down in the hedgerow. I honestly thought they would hear me, so they'd run away, but for some reason they didn't hear me. They didn't catch scent of me. And it was just such a wonderful thing to see. Yeah, if I'd have got my camera out, we could have had wonderful footage, but there again, I just never thought about it at all.
I mean, you say you have your phone with you. It strikes me that you're not an intuitive, instinctive person who does film things spontaneously. Is that the case?
Yeah.
I'm sure many youngsters listening sort of just can't forgive you and can't understand why it hasn't happened. But of course, we don't all think the same. That's the issue.
Yeah, I mean, children nowadays are brought up with phones, aren't they? I wasn't, I'm much older. Yeah, I never thought about it at all. It would have been wonderful footage. So I do apologise to anyone listening that's thinking, what a crazy lady. So, yeah.
What sort of length of time was that? How long was that incident?
Oh, it was only a couple of minutes.
That's still a decent time to experience two cats like that.
It was out of this world. It was. I can't really describe it because it's something that is imprinted on my mind and something I'll never forget, ever.
And I guess that is the absolute confirmation that it's only one cub, isn't it? Because you saw them again, and it was only one, and the cub was bigger. Describe the cub. How had it changed, do you think?
When I saw it the first time, its fur was not downy, but fluffier. And this time it was sleek and shiny. I couldn't actually see the rosettes. I mean, obviously they would be there, but I couldn't see them this time. Its face had filled out more, and its ears, they wouldn't be bigger, but they looked a little bigger. And it was just the cutest thing. I mean, absolutely adorable. And what a thing to be able to, hide in a hedgerow and watch.
How was it reacting to its mother? What kind of vibe was there between the two of them?
It was just sat looking at her, watching her, because she was sort of prowling up and down. And like I say, I don't know if she was attempting to make a kill or deciding if any of the sheep were worth chasing or whatever. And the cat was just looking at it like any young child would look at its mother and think, what are you doing? It was just had that look on its face as if to say, oh, mother, what are you doing? It was just sat there, and its mouth was open, so it looked to be grinning. I know that sounds crazy, but it looked to have a grin on its face. Yeah, just this, beautiful little look on its face, just watching its mother. And mother was prowling up and down. And I don't know whether she'd have gone for a kill if the birds hadn't started swooping at them. I still wouldn't have got that on video, obviously, because I wouldn't have thought.
It must have been very interesting to see nature's alarm action. I think it is very striking when you see other parts of the natural world respond to a big predator, live, for real. And not many witnesses do point this out, but it is something that does happen, and some do, and it's really vivid. And so what was that like? What triggered it? Did they come down from the trees, or were they flying over?
Yeah, they must have been in the trees, and all of a sudden I heard the ack sound of a magpie, and I thought, oh no, hopefully they'll stay away, but they didn't, and it swooped down right at the mother, and then one swooped down at the cub, and there must have been half a dozen magpies, and they're all swooping down and making a lot of noise, and I think mother thought, oh, I think we ought to get away from here, and try somewhere else for our lunch. It was a shame that happened, but also fascinating at the same time.
Yeah. How did mother look compared to when you'd seen her before? In good nick?
Yes, beautiful. Gleaming. Her coat was gleaming. And the strange thing is, although I'd seen her before, she looked smaller. And I don't know if that's because I hadn't seen her for a little while, and in my head she looked differently to what she actually looked like when I saw her, but she looked smaller. Very compact. That's what I'm going to say about her. Her coat was absolutely shining. They both looked really fit and healthy, so obviously wherever they've been, they could have still been around, I don't know.
I was going to say, you saw them in a location not far away that you weren't expecting. To what extent do you think they had gone away, or they were in the quarry area or nearby, and you just hadn't seen them, or a bit of both? Or do you just don't know?
I just don't know. They could have been in the quarry area. I know at that time, which was sort of mid to late November, the rut was going on, so there were quite a few stags about and deer and things like that. So maybe they had been in the area and just feeding on things like that. And I wouldn't have seen them maybe if they'd been down in the woods and that. Maybe they just kept hidden up down there and fed down there. I don't know.
I think you're right to think about the commotion of the farm machinery and farm activity. I think that would keep them away from closer to you.
Mm.
How were the sheep reacting in that incident? Were the sheep aware of them or not? Or were they keeping sort of distance from them?
There was absolute panic from the sheep, and they were all at the top of the field in a circle, pressed up against the hedgerow, and there was a lot of noise going on because they'd seen the cats. So, yeah, and whether a lot of the sheep noise had alerted the magpies, I'm not sure, but there was quite a lot of noise going on up that top end of the field there. So maybe the magpies had been alerted by all that noise that was going on.
Are there rabbits in that field? Is that another option, that she was thinking about rabbits?
Truthfully, I've never seen rabbits in that field. It's not to say there aren't any, but I've personally never seen any in there.
You're not, through the farmer, getting reports of dead, suspicious sheep, are you?
No, I'm not. No, and we've got trail cameras in places where it would potentially pick up a kill. There's been nothing on the cameras at all, nothing. And normally, I know this is going to sound really strange, but really you know when there's been a sheep kill, because if I go outside into the yard, you know when you were young, when you used to go into a butcher's shop and you could smell that meat smell, that fresh meat.
Yeah.
That's the smell we get. And sometimes my husband will say, I've just been to the dustbin and there's fresh meat. So I then go and try and, what's terrible is, I then go and try and find where it is. Sometimes I can't because I think the smell may be coming from across the road at the other farm.
Yeah, but say it had happened in that field where you saw them, then you wouldn't smell it from that distance, would you?
No. It's usually when the smell travels on the wind that I pick it up, but no. I mean, obviously that time they hadn't got a kill and the magpies thwarted them from getting a kill. When they moved off into the next fields, whether they had more of a chance there. But by that point, I'd decided to go home because they'd gone through into the other fields, and I thought, I'm not going to be able to keep up with them, and I'm probably just going to scare them off anyway. So I came home.
How much bigger was the cub, and what sort of size is it now, or was it then, compared to mother?
Well, when I saw it, it was like an overgrown domestic cat.
The first of all, yeah.
First time, yeah. So now I would say it was a little smaller than a spaniel. It had really shot up. I couldn't believe the size of it. I really couldn't. Yeah, it was a bit smaller than a spaniel. Obviously nowhere near the size of mother. But a pretty decent size, really.
And when they went off, did Mum go first and it followed, or did they go in parallel, or what?
They went parallel. As soon as mother started running, the little one joined her and they ran parallel. Yeah, they ran together side by side.
All of that in plain daylight and good weather?
Yes.
You imagine having that footage, that would have been...
Oh, don't.
Absolute bombshell, wouldn't it, that footage?
Absolutely, yes.
But you've got the memory, and you're telling us about it now, so that's nice, yeah.
Yeah.
And how did your husband react when you told him?
He just sat and stared at me and he said, "You're joking." And I said, "No, absolutely not." I told him what had gone on. And he said, "Oh my gosh." He was very jealous. He said, "I'd have loved to have seen that." He said, "I really would." He said, "But you weren't expecting that." And I said, No, not at all. I wasn't, because I didn't think they were still here. So, yeah, it was wonderful. Big surprise to see.
In that interval, how was the behaviour of the farm cats? Were they getting a bit more complacent and a bit more confident and not on edge?
They were back to what they used to be. They'd come for their food. They'd hang around in the farmyard and play like they used to. Find a sunny spot and have a sleep. All back to normal. So that's why I thought the cats weren't about, because of the behaviour of the barn cats, because they came back, and before we'd had the issue with them not being around, not coming for their food. But yeah, even sunbathing on the car bonnet and things like that. So they'd come back and acted as normal.
To what extent were you and your husband really missing it? missing the mother and cub? Or were you sort of enjoying the fact that you could be a bit freer and not on guard so much?
At the beginning, I really missed them. And I think I was more concerned for their safety. I was just hoping wherever they were well and they weren't being persecuted by anybody. That was my main concern at the beginning. And then I kind of got used to the fact that, well, maybe they've gone, and that's it. We might not see them again. And yeah, going out at night, still the head torches on, obviously, but not quite as bothered that there might be a big cat somewhere nearby. I don't say we forgot about her. We did keep mentioning it, saying, I wonder if the cat will come back. And my husband kept saying, maybe they've gone. Every day, every night, we'd say to each other, any sign of the cat? And then it got to the point where we didn't ask that question. We thought she'd moved on because of all the noise and all the farm machinery, and it had been very, very noisy for weeks. So we just expected that she'd gone and she probably wouldn't come back. That's what we thought.
And you didn't hear of any other sightings or reports or gossip in that time elsewhere from other people?
No, I didn't. I didn't hear anything, which made me concerned as well in a way, because I thought, oh gosh.
In the back of your mind, was it occurring to you that this was probably the natal range of the youngster, and so it might always, sometime in its life, wander back for part of its territory, or mother and cub might still use this area as part of its territory in the future, so there might be a longer interval, but you still might see them?
I thought they may come back, but I just thought to myself, oh, maybe it'll be summertime again when they come back round, because that's when we saw them first, and I thought when there's more food about and things like that. But it was quite sad, really, to think they'd gone permanently.
Okay. There's more events, aren't there? There's 3 or 4 incidents. So, yeah, well, okay, I think take us on to the next one, if you would.
Well, the next one, it was only a few days later, and I was sat in the lounge reading a book. Subconsciously, I could hear a lot of noise going on outside, and I thought, what is going on? And I just happened to look out of the window, and the trees, we have an orchard just outside the window, the trees in the orchard were full of crows, magpies, absolutely full, which is something I'd never seen before. And the noise they were making, and I thought, So I quickly got my shoes on and ran outside. And I went and looked over the gate, and there stood the mother cat at the edge of the field, just stood there. And I don't think she knew what to do, actually, because of all this noise. It was horrendous. I tried to be so quiet, and she was just stood there, and then she heard me. I must have made a sound, and she turned around and saw me, and she kind of just melted into the hedgerow and disappeared. And I watched the birds, and they were following her. I could see the direction she was travelling because the birds were going in the same direction. So I thought, so I know which way she's going. So it looks like she's using a totally different route to what she was before. So that's why I decided to move one of the trail cameras and put it where she's been. Well, where I've seen her the last couple of times,
Yeah, and interesting you saw the alarm calls again. And all that was very close to the house then?
Yes, it was. She was very close to the house, which doesn't really bother me at all. It was lovely to see her just stood there so I could see her side on. I thought to myself, she is much smaller than I remembered. I imagined some great hulking beast coming round the corner, but yeah, she's not at all.
Well, female black leopards can be smaller than people imagine.
Yes.
A bit bigger and longer than your average Labrador.
Yes. The heads are much smaller than you think, aren't they, as well?
Yeah, very indistinct, I think, a leopard head.
Yeah.
She's obviously perfectly calm and content and confident close to the house, isn't she? There's nothing you're doing that's bothering her. No,
she doesn't seem to mind coming close to the house. And as long as we know that she's back, then we are able to take more precautions. I think we spoke about it before. It's just a case of living alongside her and a cub. And just knowing that she's there and being aware that she's there. I mean, I think my husband went out to the dustbin one night. I forgot to mention this to you. He went out to the dustbin one night and he saw a pair of eyes watching him from the hedgerow. He said, "There's a pair of huge eyes in the hedgerow." And I said, "Oh, it'll be cattle or sheep." And he said, What in our garden?" I said, "Oh, no. So she was probably watching him, it was round about that 10:30 mark where she always tended to arrive,
It'd be interesting to know to what extent she is aware of you. She knows your habits and your movements and your smells and your vibes. I imagine pretty much, and she's just unbothered and knows to work around you. Will the cub get like that as well, or has the cub got that already, or will it be a bit more bumbling and unpredictable? So that's the issue, I think.
Well, that could be the issue. Yeah.
And what about the cats now, the farm cats?
We had a period where they disappeared again, so we knew what was going on.
Okay.
They were coming for their food, maybe not all of them, because I think I said before we have 6. They were not all turning up for food. And they'd eat quickly, really quickly, and then you turn around and they're gone. Thought, goodness me. They may not come at lunchtime when I went to feed them. They wouldn't be about in the yard playing or sunbathing. So you knew very well that the cat was back.
This was after you'd had the first 2 new incidents, is it?
Yes. And also we've got bird feeders out. There were no birds on the feeders. And I thought, yeah, it says it all, really. And that I'd put food out for some of the birds in the yard and they wouldn't land. They'd sit and look at it on the barn roof, but they wouldn't come down and get the food. So it was quite apparent that the cat was about. There was no bird song, no, just that silence.
So had you not had the 2 sightings, you would have predicted that the cats were back because of the behaviour of the farm cats and the birds, would you?
Yes. I'd have known straight away that they were back. Because I said to my husband, you can tell the cats are back because of the behaviour of the barn cats and the birds. And he said, oh, yes, absolutely. They've changed completely again.
Then it got frosty and I got a text saying it had a very distinct sighting of the black form of the cat against the frost. Tell us what that was like.
Well, we'd had snow and we'd had a very, very heavy frost. I go out in the morning and just have a little wander about. And I'd just gone for a little wander and I'd gone into the farmyard and I was looking across at the field thinking, gosh, that's a heavy frost, And I noticed a movement out of the corner of my eye. And when I looked, it was the mother cat. She was on her own and she just walked up the field. No rush. I'm sure that she knew I was there. She must have been aware that I was stood there watching. And she just walked up the field. And the thing I noticed mostly about her was her fur was much thicker. Because I thought, oh, gosh, do they get a winter coat? I've no idea. But her fur was much thicker, so it hadn't got that. I mean, it was quite bright. Even though it was a very frosty morning, it was quite bright. But I didn't notice that sheen on her coat this time. I just noticed her fur was much thicker. Especially in her tail, I noticed it more than anything. And she just walked up the field as though, she hadn't a care in the world. And the way she was heading would suggest to me she was heading towards the quarry. So whether the young one was there.
What kind of distance away?
About 40 feet this time.
Still pretty close.
Yeah. And I didn't have my phone with me that morning. I'd just gone out just to get some fresh air, really. And there she was. I thought, oh, goodness. And she really stood out, as obviously in the frost, And yeah, she just sauntered up the field as though she hadn't a care in the world. She wasn't, like I say, she must have known I was there. She just didn't seem to be bothered by my presence at all.
She wasn't in any kind of stalking or hunting mode?
No, she was just... There were no sheep in the field, so there was nothing in the field she could have hunted. She just walked, and I watched her walk up there, and I thought, well, the way she's heading indicates to me she's heading into the quarry. So maybe she'd left the cub there.
This time, no alarms from the corvids?
No, nothing.
No hassle from birds?
No hassle this time for her. Probably quite thankful, I would think.
So interestingly, you noticed, the thicker or the more puffed out fur, longer hair. Now, what was the interval between the previous sighting?
So that would be late November. So this one would be 6 weeks.
Interesting. Well, the thicker fur is reported by some witnesses, not as many as you might expect. But it's more common for people to just say that tighter, sleeker, sheeny fur, which you've done. Do you know, I notice it with Zaki, my black cat here. He's got longer, more puffed. It's puffed out more as well in the winter. Definitely thicker and longer, even in a little domestic cat like him.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting observation, Liz. She's developed that winter coat, perhaps. It'll be interesting if you see the cub again and see if you notice any difference in that.
Yes.
How long was that sighting for in the frost?
Well, I watched her walk all the way up the field, so she probably took about 40 seconds to just meander up the field. She was in no rush.
Yeah, well, we'll come on to filming, getting evidence in a minute, but all through these incidents that we're talking about now, the second series of incidents, it's only been you, your husband, other than the eyes at the edge of the garden. He's not had a clear sighting like you have, has he?
No, he hasn't. No, he hasn't seen anything. So also, if you go outside, even if you don't see her at night time, you can feel there's something. You get that feeling that you're being watched, which we know is probably her, but he hasn't sensed anything at all. Nothing. Because he said to me, are you sure you're not seeing things? And I said, no, absolutely not, because he hasn't sensed the cat about, whereas before he did, you see, and he saw her often, didn't he?
Say he did see her, or see them, is he more likely to get footage on a phone camera than you? Is he more trigger happy with the phone?
No, absolutely not. I mean, oh gosh, no.
Don't want to start a family argument now.
Don't want a domestic. No, he wouldn't, no.
So we've got to rely on you. You're our only chance.
I am, actually, and I'm absolutely hopeless myself, so there we go.
Yeah, okay. We'll put the pressure on you again in a minute. Yeah, well, that must have been great, seeing a frosty morning picture of a black panther going across the frost. So there's one more since then, isn't there, as well?
Just one more, and that was the 16th of January. We were in the kitchen, and I'd said to my husband, I haven't seen the cat for a while. I wonder if she's gone again. And he said, possible, I don't know. And I said, I'm just going outside with these things for the dustbin. And I walked across the yard, and I just happened to look across towards the farm gate, and I just saw the back end of her and her tail running past the gate. Had I looked, a second earlier, I would have seen her in all her glory, you know. I don't know what made me look, but I just turned and looked, and I just saw the back end of her and the looping tail, and she was so quick and gone.
Do you think you disturbed her?
Possibly, yes. She might have been just having a little mooch about, and I've come along and she thought, I better go. But yeah, it was the speed, the quickness. I hadn't seen her move so quickly before. She was just gone.
How close was that to you?
From where I was stood to the gate would be 30 feet. So another fairly close.
And you do have a trail camera at that gate, don't you?
Yes.
You've just checked that trail camera, haven't you? I was waiting with bated breath thinking, we might have an announcement for the podcast, but you tell us what happened.
Well, I do have an announcement. The Great British weather hasn't been very favourable towards the trail camera, that's all I can say. I opened it up today and it was just dripping in condensation. everything was all steamed up, and I thought, oh no. So nothing, absolutely nothing.
It stopped working, had it, before that event, basically, because of the dampness?
Yeah, I mean, I check them regularly. So disappointing, because I honestly thought, this is it. We've got her. We were bound to have got her. Oh no, nothing.
Jinxed.
Yeah.
The last 18 months, weather generally in Britain has been relentlessly wet, hasn't it? We haven't had many breaks, and it's not good for trail cameras. I've lost a couple. Well, often you bring them in and dry them out in the airing cupboard or on a sunny windowsill, and within a couple of days they're back working again. But I've lost more than usual in the last year. I've lost one this week, actually. Just brought in one locally, and I thought, it's been out longer than it should have been. And it's really only catching the local deer and foxes and badgers and things, but which I like to watch. And there's another 30, 40 pounds gone.
I know.
It just happens. But of course, if you miss a key event, that's really hard to wear. So how frustrating. But it does show you, Liz, actually, that you did have a trail camera set up in the right position. You'd got that one right, hadn't you?
Yeah, it's in the right place. It's quite exposed, I think, as well, where it is. It had to be for us to get the angle on it for catching the cat. I know I've got some out in the fields and things like that. They're a bit more protected because of being underneath the hedges and things like that. So they're a bit more protected. When I go to those, they're just fine. But this particular one...
Yeah, and the low temperatures at night, it's not buffered from that at all.
I'm thinking of keeping it in that area, obviously, but trying to put it somewhere where it's a bit more protected, because that one is really suffering. I mean, I know you can get boxes, can't you, for them?
It's more expense, more hassle, more time when you're changing them. And if you want them to be camouflaged and covert, then, of course, it doesn't always help with that, to be honest.
And I think as well, you've said it before, the animals get used to where they are. So if I move it, she'll know that it's moved.
Let it weather in a position and let them get used to it, and let her get used to it, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lesson there to keep persevering, isn't it? Hopefully she will on her wanderings. Well, there's two of them, so you've upped your chances with two of them about as well.
Yes.
When we finished the last episode, I suddenly thought, we didn't talk about CCTV or security cameras on the property or in the barns, because you quite accept that is an option that you should consider, but I think it's just more hassle in your life, isn't it? One more gadget to have dictating to you in life. I can understand why you're a bit reticent, but say you had CCTV or security cameras on the property, the main house, and on the outbuildings. How many times do you think you might have got footage because of that? How often has she been close enough to be caught on CCTV, do you think?
She wouldn't have been. Maybe this time when she's run past the gate, that one time. But other times not, because of obviously the working farm as well. Yeah, they've got buildings. She's usually in the field to the other side of the house. Potentially not. I don't know, unless we've got a CCTV on the end of the stables, which are not part of our property really. So I'd have to get consent, I suppose, to put anything up there.
Okay, so it's not an obvious solution that I thought.
No, I don't think it would. I mean, last year she was around the house more, but now she seems to be in the field. Now, whether that'll change, I don't know. I guess we have to keep revising how we try and catch her on film. So it may be that we have to have CCTV at some point if she starts to come back into the garden, which is where we were seeing her last year, and in the yard, which is where we were seeing her last year. So if she starts coming back into those areas...
Actually, that answers my basic question, that she has been close enough in the past for CCTV to potentially capture footage.
Oh, yes.
At the moment, as far as you're aware, she hasn't been, but doesn't mean to say she wouldn't resort to her previous movements closer.
Yeah, so then we could rethink everything, couldn't we, if she decided she was going to come back in the garden and that kind of thing. The only good thing, well, I don't know if it is a good thing, I caught something on one of the trail cameras because we have a trail camera in the yard. It was a drone flying over the yard, which was quite spooky. I thought, oh goodness, we've never seen one of those at night before, so that kind of freaked me out a little.
You've no idea what that was about and who was flying it?
No idea at all. So where that had come from, who it belonged to, I don't know.
Maybe they filmed a cat.
Well, that'd just be typical, wouldn't it?
Did you mention that to the farmer? Because the farmer presumably wouldn't be happy.
I haven't seen him, but when I see him, I will mention that to him because, yeah, he's not going to be very happy at all.
Okay. Have you thought about other options for getting evidence? Well, you keep on looking for track and sign and scat and that sort of thing, don't you?
Yes. I even look up in the trees now because I know some people have seen them in trees. So I look up in the trees, check that the trees haven't been scratched. Yeah, there's not been any sign at all. The only sign of anything I've caught is badger. I'm sure they levitate because there's no pug marks at all and it's so muddy. You'd think there would be something, but there's just nothing at all. No. But, we persevere and keep doing it every day and I'm sure in time it will all pay off.
Yeah. In this series of events, the farm cats are not being picked off. You haven't lost any since the big cats have returned.
No, nothing. Nothing.
They've returned to be wary and cautious still.
Yes, they know that there's something going on. Yeah, they're very alert.
It's helpful for you, isn't it? Because without seeing her and the cub, you can read their behaviour and know that they're likely still to be around.
Yes, I rely on the cats because they're so predictable. Cats are creatures of habit, aren't they? So they're so predictable in that I can tell if the cat's here, if the cat's not here. I suspect at the moment she's still here by their behaviour. I'm going to get out before the weekend because there's terrible storms coming, isn't there, at the weekend? So I need to get out prior to that and check all the trail cameras are all right and potentially put some more where I think maybe she's going to be. I just keep looking, but there's just nothing at all.
In a way, the experiences you're having are the real thing. But it is, of course, it's just a wonderful opportunity with two of them about and not far away to try and get evidence. And I think some people listening will think, blimey, up your game. But, I mean, people just don't realise how stealthy and to some extent random, you're saying, that you put them in one place and she's moved to another place. So you can't have trail cameras at every corner.
I mean, I think what with our cameras and Sharon's, at one point we had 10 just in the small area around by the house because that's where she was, and there wasn't one camera caught anything.
And you had some stolen, didn't you?
Yes, we've had cameras stolen, SD cards removed. I've even gone to the cameras and they've been turned off. And I have a checklist when I do my cameras, when I change the card, make sure the card's formatted, make sure the camera's turned on, everything. And I've gone back and the cameras have been turned off. And it's so disheartening.
These are people who must be trespassing.
Yes, I suspect the poachers. Sometimes I've even gone and the cards are just wiped clean, and I think it's impossible. But the cards are wiped clean. It is disheartening because you feel like you're bashing your head against a brick wall. And then I think to myself, well, that's your fault because you haven't hidden the camera well enough. I did get one hidden. Oh, and nobody could have found it. In fact, I couldn't find it when I went back for it. And all I got on there was stags and sheep.
It's a constant compromise, isn't it, between making sure cameras are sashed away and difficult to spot, but making sure they're at the vantage point that's likely to film the target animal.
It's tough, and I don't think unless people have got trail cameras out, and quite a lot of trail cameras that are spread over a wide area, and you're walking through the mud. I mean, one day I was walking across the field and where the sheep had been, it was so muddy that my boots got stuck in the mud, and I kept walking. It's dirty, it's cold, it's wet.
And very time-consuming.
It is very time-consuming. When it's a cold day and it's blowing and wet, It feels like a chore. But you've got to do it, because if you don't do it, that is the time that you're going to miss her, isn't it?
It's initially exciting, but it eventually becomes just a routine, disciplined event.
Yes.
And then the time for checking through all the cards. Long evenings, slog. But as you said last time, you've got to check absolutely every one.
Yeah. It is exciting. At first, it was really exciting. And, oh, my goodness, we're going to catch a cat on camera. And that's what I thought, that within a week we'd have caught her, and that's that. And no, it's not. It's not. Reality isn't like that at all, is it?
Sometimes you think, oh, are there other technologies we're missing? But I actually think that the trail cameras do a basic job. And if you've got, a reasonable number, you've got a good chance. Drones are a bit hit and miss, and the cost of them and the logistics for drones. And well, I suppose being out with a thermal camera is another option, but they're very expensive, and maybe you'd have to invite somebody in that you trusted who had one, who was good and diligent. But again, you could be out many evenings on cold winter nights and she wouldn't show up. So, it's all hit and miss, unfortunately.
It is, yeah. We'll get there in the end. We will get there.
Yeah. And last time, Liz, on the last episode you were on, I think people could really pick up your emotions, and this was a severe impact on your life, very emotional. Are they changing at all? And
I don't think I'm quite as not excited. I won't say that, because last time I was more like a giddy schoolchild when I saw her. I'm excited to see her, because I think it's an honour to see her, and the cub. It's something that most people would dream of, isn't it? To have a big cat living in their backyard, basically. My main emotion is concern for her.
Still. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think, oh gosh, I hope no one finds out she's living here and comes and upsets her. I mean, obviously the farmer knows she's here. But he's not bothered that she's here, because she's not causing a problem. She's not causing an issue. So he's not bothered. He's happy to let her roam about. It's just if other people find out. So obviously we never speak about it to anybody. And sometimes I nearly blurt it out to people. I nearly blurt it out. And then I think, no, be quiet. I was talking to a lady. I went to hospital a few weeks back, and I was talking to a lady, the lady who was doing my scan. And I was reading one of your books, actually. And she said, what are you reading about? And I said, oh, big cats. I said, living in the British countryside. And she looked at me a bit strange. And I said, well, that's if you believe that kind of thing. And she said, oh, I do. She said, I'm not telling you where I was. She said, but I cycle. She said, and I was cycling over to County Durham. And she watched a puma chase a rabbit across a field. And the rabbit went down the rabbit hole. And the puma was digging like crazy at the rabbit hole to get down there. Yeah, and she said, I can't tell you where I saw it. And I said, I don't want to know where you saw it. She said, it's just something that'll always live with me for the rest of my life. And I nearly told her. I opened my mouth. You open your mouth to speak, and I went, no, don't tell her.
Did she ask why you were interested?
Yes, she did. She said, what's the interest with you? And I said, well, I'd just been listening to a podcast online. I said, and I found it quite fascinating. So I thought I'd get this gentleman's book, and read and see what it says. She says, do you believe they're out there? I said, oh, absolutely they are. Yeah, definitely.
Well, good on her. Do you know what? I've never heard of a cat digging at a rabbit warren, rabbit burrow. I have heard of repeat visits and sightings around warren situations. She saw a tan-coloured one.
She said, I went home and checked what it was, and it was a puma.
Oh, nice one.
So that was just by sat reading your book that I found that little tidbit of information out, And
got talking. Yeah. Liz, I'm detecting you're not as wary and nervous about it being unpredictable in relation to you, about her. I don't think you were last time, but of course you've been up close with her, and of course being up close, anybody would be on edge, but you yourself are not as nervous as you were last time.
No, I'm not nervous. I'm not nervous at all, to be honest, because I've been fairly close to her. She hasn't bothered me. I think, as you've said, I think she knows that we live here. There's probably been times she's been watching us and we just haven't been aware. So I think she probably knows the routines we follow and things. She knows we're not going to hurt her. If we were going to hurt her, she knows we would have done by now. And she just thinks, yeah, they're all right. I'll just saunter on by. They're not going to hurt me. So I'm not scared of her anymore. I mean, before I was terrified, but I'm not scared of her at all. She's part of the family to us, you know. She's like part of the family.
This is the natal range. It must be, mustn't it? You first saw that cub when it was very young. So you're not a threat in its natal range, and it's a key part of her existence and the youngster's existence. So you are a known quantity, basically. And of course, the time when she ran past the gate, you hardly noticed that. You got a glimpse, and you might not have even seen that. So there might have been other cases where that's happened and you just haven't got the glimpse like you did then.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I love to see her, but I'm not scared of her at all. Obviously, I'm not going to go up to her and try and pat her on the head or anything like that.
Maybe the phone camera may do the business. You know, you might have a good sighting and be long enough in daylight and close enough. I think if it's at distance, it's going to struggle to be good footage rather than just blobby. But do you think if it happens again, you get another good sighting long enough again, you will think, hang on, this is it. I must get the camera out. Do you think it will happen next time?
Yes. I'm going to stick a note to my forehead, get camera out. Yes, if it happens again, the camera will definitely be out and I'll get that footage of her.
And of course, we'd love to have another guest appearance from you. You know, it's lovely to have an ongoing live case, Liz, so thank you very much for being prepared to share it with us. We can sense the vibes and the emotion from you and the excitement. You know, it's exciting for all of us to sort of listen in on this.
I'm just pleased that I've got the opportunity to share it. I want to get it across how it makes me feel. To see the mum and cub was like euphoria. Something so amazing. So close up, really.
And the sounds, you know, the sounds of nature, you know, the sounds of those crows and magpies moving in to alert it. You know, that's a safari type experience. That's something people remember all their lives.
You don't expect to find it in the field next door to your house, do you?
If you get footage or evidence of any kind, wonderful. If you don't, we'll just enjoy hearing it on the podcast. I always say that different types of evidence influences different people and different organisations in different ways. So people's sightings and encounters are a type of evidence when they do influence many people.
Yeah.
As we're speaking, Zaki, the cat, has just moved into Owen's room where I do the recordings and is hassling me. So it's the first time Zaki's joined me alongside. Hello, Zaki. We're talking about cats. He actually bit me and drew blood this week, so it shows you can't... I don't know if that's happened from any of your cats, Liz, but I was up with Duke. Duke, unfortunately, the dog has got cancer at the moment, so it's on his last few weeks.
Oh, poor Duke.
Yeah, lovely dog, and he's very fit and sleek and active at 10 years old, so he's, you know, still feels quite young, really. But unfortunately, he's got some advancing cancer, so not long to go. So he's been looked after, and I check him in the night, and I was shifting Zaki back into his box bed, and Zaki didn't like it, and so I suddenly got the canines sunk into my wrist, and Zaki drew blood. So it just shows you he's a wild little cat at heart, even though he's softened enough to come in half in the house. So, yeah. Yeah, all right, Zaki, be with you in a minute, sir. Right, apologies for that interlude. Anything else you'd like to say, Liz, as we close out?
The only thing I wanted to say was to you personally is to say thank you for all the support and all the info and for keeping in touch. You know, it feels like I've got made a friend over the cat. Your support's been wonderful, really. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Well, lovely. Thank you very much. To some extent, and basically, I'm being nosy, Liz, but
you've spoilt it now, Rick. You've spoilt it now.
In a way, that's part of the benefit of doing what I do. I get to hear from so many people on and off, you know, a lot of the time. I mean, before we came on tonight, for example, I just had a text from Craig.
Yes.
who was a previous guest, saying, I think the cat's back. I'm putting out more cameras tomorrow. So I will, after I've said goodbye to you this evening, I will probably be in touch with Craig for a half an hour about what's happening on his doorstep. And we might have him back and he might get footage. So, it's just a rolling churn of interesting people talking about what's going on. And so it's part of my learning process and obviously part of what happens doing this subject. But of course, I'm always looking to see what we can get for the podcast to share it all.
Yes.
I hope your husband gets to have a good sighting as well. Even the score up a bit as well.
Yes, it would, wouldn't it? It seems like it's just me. It's very one-sided, isn't it?
Great. Well, keep in touch. I'm sure you will. Good luck. Sure we'll hear from you somehow again before too long.
Yes.
Thanks ever so much, Liz, for coming back onto Big Cat Conversations.
Oh, you're welcome, Rick. You're welcome.
Our next guest is Neil, and we will continue the theme of cubs. Neil is going to explain an incident that occurred when he was camping in Devon, and Neil was 14 at the time. Several pretty obvious questions arise from what he saw and what he's going to describe, so we will raise those, but we're not claiming to have any answers. Well, Neil, thanks for coming on to talk about this incident, and just to get our bearings right, it was in Devon. Was it a coastal area or inland?
We were about 10-15 minute drive from the beach. We were by a very large lake on a campsite. Lots of fields and lots of countryside around. And it was the summertime.
You were with your dad, who is a police officer. You can describe that, but obviously he was off duty on a break. Take us through all what happened, and then we'll have the questions about it, our thoughts about it afterwards. But if you could explain what you saw.
Yeah, okay. I was with my dad at the time. We were walking down. We used to have a trailer tent. So we used to go all over the place camping during the summertime when we were off school. We were on this campsite, large shower block, toilet block, and to the rear of the male and the female showers and toilets, there was an open area with large sinks in there where you'd all wash the dishes and stuff. So we'd walked down to the toilet block when we noticed 3 or 4 RSPCA vans and a number of police cars and vans also. So as we walked past the rear to the toilet block, there was a number of RSPCA carrying cat carrying boxes and a number of police. So as we were walking past, the police were trying to usher us away, but the RSPCA, they were like, hi, good morning, as we were walking past, and they were lifting these boxes up. There was a large commotion coming from the second RSPCA guy that was walking past. And when I looked into the box, it was definitely a large, I'd say a panther of some description, a kitten, and same in another box. And then I couldn't see what was in the other 2 boxes, making a real hissing, very aggressive hissing noise. I'm obviously not happy to be in the box. Got a real good look at it, so I know it wasn't a kitten from a domesticated cat. The head was the size of a Staffordshire Bull Terrier, a puppy sort of, and very rounded.
Completely black, was it, as far as you could tell?
No, it had a black coat to it, but it had like white, grey, like fluffy fur coming from it sort of thing, from its face. Obviously, with it being a young, it wasn't fully developed. As I say, the police just didn't want us anywhere near the area. So we were just ushered away, and I just carried on with my dad, walking back to the trailer tent.
There was no bigger animal, just standard domestic cat size carrying crates.
Yeah. He was squashed in the box, and it wasn't happy to be in there. It was making a lot of noise. Not that a domesticated cat could have made.
And the vibes from the police were sort of move on, nothing to see here, basically.
Yeah, they didn't want us to be there, full stop.
People who are listening to this and a bit sceptical or thinking, no, it wouldn't have been cubs being recovered or kidnapped from the wild, I think there's 2 thoughts they would have. The first thought is that you are making this up or exaggerating or whatever. But, I've obviously discussed this with you, and I know that you reported it to some key contacts in the sort of Big Cat network, which is great. Thank you very much for doing that. We're all very grateful for this information. For me, the reason you would not be making this up or exaggerating is that you were with your dad, who is a police officer.
Yeah, he's retired now. He was actually chief inspector. It's something that I've held within me. I've told various friends. My wife knows about it. Family members know about it. But it's something that we seen 28 years ago. Now, obviously, Facebook wasn't around then, etc., etc. It was only 6 months or so ago, scrolling through Facebook, I noticed Big Cat Sightings UK and a couple of other ones, and I just clicked on them, like added as a friend. And I've looked at a few of the stories and I've thought, okay, that's feasible, that's not feasible. I believe that one, I don't believe that one. It took me a while. As you know, I think it was November, December. I just put my story up. I had a load of people interested and a load of people that put some silly comments on there. The lady who runs the admin, she got in touch with me. I had a very in-depth conversation with her before she forwarded my number onto yourself for you to contact me. But yeah, this is going back 27 years ago. I believe they were there then. Possibility there could be something still out there now. I don't know.
With your dad being a police officer who was with you at the time, to me that establishes the fact that you've no interest in making this up for attention seeking or whatever.
Oh, no. I put that story up on Facebook on the Big Cat site in the UK. I've not put anything else on there. I don't intend to put anything else on there. Everything that they need to know is on there, to be fair.
Just to sort of finish on your dad's perspective, of course, a senior police officer on his break in somebody else's beat doesn't really want to pry, do they? He could presumably see this was sensitive stuff and he didn't want to rumble it or ask questions.
Exactly. My dad, when we were younger, my dad was a police officer when he was on duty or off duty, and everything was by the book with him. He just smiled at the police officers and he went, come on, let's go. And that was the end of it. No arguing, and I wouldn't have dreamt of arguing with him anyway because he was a very big man.
Good stuff, yeah. Well, I can understand it's bugged your family, sort of never being able to get any closure or conclusion or further information on it all these years. But you can also understand how awkward it is, I think, for these bodies to have to deal with something like that. Unfortunately, those of us who are really into it and interested want to know more, but I can understand why it gets hushed up and all sorts of questions. But I think the other one that people might be thinking is, oh, hang on, you've made a mistake. This was actually a raid at a property where there was animal welfare issues, and the RSPCA and the police do go to properties to confiscate animals. But you're sure it wasn't that, Neil?
There was no properties within the area, apart from like the reception area to the campsite, that shower block, the toilet block, the washing of the dishes area. There was nothing but fields, hedgerows, woodlands, ditches with like a stream running down the side of it. No other properties that I can remember seeing at all. Not something that could be, an answer to what I seen that day.
At the time, obviously, 14-year-old, complete sort of shock to you because you probably didn't even know about the concept of big cats being dump pets living in the wild and maybe breeding on. That was completely unknown to you, I presume. So what did you make of it immediately and then in the following days as you thought about it at that time?
To be fair, I just remember seeing what I seen and nothing after that. I was just sort of, that was the end of it. I didn't think anything of it at all up until last year sometime when I found these groups and I was looking into other stories on there and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that.
You just accepted it as a youngster that you were around when there was something sensitive, there was a sensitive operation going around and you obeyed your dad and had to get out of it. And you didn't think too much about, blimey, they were recovering black leopard cubs from the wild. Where was the mother? Those questions, they're all occurring to you now, but they didn't occur as a 14-year-old.
No, not at the time. 13, 14 years of age, no, not a clue.
Okay, well, very interesting, because also what you're describing, the physically and behaviourally, with the hissing and the discomfort and stress that they were under and how they looked, it is about right. That's how black leopard cubs, if they were recovered swooped up from the wild by people, that's about what would happen, I think.
Yeah, very distressed. It was definitely very, very distressed.
You reckon there were 3 of them, do you?
I'd say definitely 3. I couldn't tell you what was in the other boxes, but there was boxes in the vans and there were people coming to and fro as well. So I honestly couldn't say that.
The thing is that it's quite likely this would happen. If they're breeding in the wild, we have mother and cub stories. We've got another one before you come on this very episode, an update from a situation in Cumbria, and we hear of others, and I hear of others, and other people on the Facebook groups will hear of others. There are credible stories of mother and cubs, and all these years with the reports going on, it's very likely that there's breeding. And of course, they're very stealthy. They don't have very big litters, so be slow build-up of a population or establishment of a population. Occasionally, landowners and other people might well bump into cubs. Although they keep relatively quiet when mum goes off hunting, they will be left alone for a while, and sometimes they will make calls or bumble out from their den area, and people could bump into them and find them. So it's almost surprising that we don't hear more of this kind of thing. There's one incident in Australia which actually led to the start of the podcast there, the Missing Panther podcast, where Ben, who does that podcast, and this is what inspired him to get into the subject, he picked up a couple of what he thought were black feral cat kittens at the base of a tree. I think they were partly up a tree, and took them into the vets all innocently thinking they needed help. And as they were getting a bit bigger, the thought was, hang on, these are from the Panthera genus. They're not little Felis catus.
Wow.
And I think he felt very bad about that because I don't think they survived. And that, of course, is the issue.
Yeah.
If you recover cubs at a very young age, they need mother for all sorts of reasons, and they may not survive. And so who knows what happened to these ones?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because three, say they were three, then three to go into captivity in a sanctuary or domestic situations where people keep these sorts of cats, you would have thought that 3 black leopards, assuming they were black leopards, it would be a talking point. Either way. So if they didn't survive, then obviously very disappointing. There's also a question of what happened to the mother. Was she away hunting at the time and they were just confiscated, and she got back to not find them there? The whole situation, what was the whole story about that led to this? And were they tipped off by somebody local?
Exactly, yeah.
And it's the sort of thing where, blimey, you'd expect some gossip. Although the RSPCA and the police officers obviously have to be professional and play dumb about it, you would have thought that eventually it would spill out and there'd be gossip.
Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe things like that were just wanted to be brushed under the carpet, kept quiet, no scaremongering tactics. I don't know, to be fair.
I think all of that still happens now.
Yeah. When I go on the Facebook group page and I have a look through some of the stories, I mean, don't forget, this happened when I was 14. I'm 48 in November, 47 now. So I always think to myself when I was reading the stories, okay, maybe if there was back when I was 14, is it possible for them to stay hidden for that long, to continue to breed for that long? That's half the reason I put my story on there. This is many, many years ago this happened. Is it possible that someone else who's had hold of them, private keepers, they've let them out since? It's just something that's always played on my mind.
The first releases would have been wartime because they're strict meat eaters, so wartime meat shortages was difficult for any meat-eating pets. I think the first releases would have been wartime, then you had the 76 Dangerous Wild Animals Act, then you had the 1981 Zoos Act. All of those times were areas when I think they leaked out for, because they were more difficult to keep and regulations became more onerous for people who had them. And more recently, just people who've had them for breeding and get stressed and, run out of money and the cuddly kitten grows up.
Yeah.
Leopards in their native lands in Africa and Asia, say, and mountain lions, the other sort of trophy pet type big cat that gets reported, in their own countries, they're very difficult to see and people don't expect to see them there. They are super stealthy, ambush predators.
Yeah.
Even in Britain, we think Britain's built up, but as soon as you start walking in the open landscape, you can go on for miles.
If there's something out there, good luck. And to be honest, I hope there is. If it does get proven right, I hope they get left alone, to be fair.
Most people think that. It's interesting you have that view as well.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, well, thanks, Neil. Really good to hear direct from you. Fascinating story. And it's interesting, if you had a dad who wasn't a police officer, he may want to discuss it with you and you might have talked it through, but I quite understand why.
There was no arguing. When we were kids, we were done as mine. Even today, if my dad told me to do something, I'd just do it straight away. I wouldn't even question him.
That's the one professional position where you can understand your dad would not talk to you about. He would not want to rumble another police force, I'm absolutely sure.
No. If they're doing a job, you leave them to it. That's the end of it, yeah. He's been retired now for about, 15 years. He'd probably still say the same today.
Yeah, well, good stuff, Neil. Thanks ever so much for your time and for coming on the show.
Lovely, thank you. Good luck with everything. Bye-bye, mate. Bye-bye.